What is up, guys? My name is Lex and I'm here at Hustler Casino live in Los Angeles, California for a crazy new game they've made up called the Bounty Game. We'll get into the rules shortly, but first I want to introduce this star-studded lineup. I'm sitting in seat number 1. We've got fellow poker vloggers Mariano and Rampage to my left. Next to them, the notorious Dan Cates, aka Jungleman. We also have Ted, Patrick, Action Dan, and Dylan. This is definitely one of the most interesting lineups that I've been a part of here at Hustler Casino. We all put in $6,000 into the bounty pool, and then there's different ways that you can win back your money by winning bounties.
1,000 from the pool. 3, 2,500. Win 4 hands, 6,000, but the crazy one is 5 hands, you win all of it. So watch out for that. Then we have our bonus hands, 6-9, 7 deuce, win 1,000.
As you can see, there's some interesting ways to get some money back. Obviously, you get a lot of money back by winning some hands. My thoughts going into this was, I think I want to be as short stack as possible while the bounty pool was as big as possible. It's a $5,000 minimum buy-in in this game, and I felt like being 100 big blinds deep would definitely be more advantageous for me than if I was 200, 300, or 400 big blinds deep. So I buy in for around $5,000 and get right into the action. 3 hands into the game, there's a raise under the gun, and I've got kings next to act. I would always 3-bet this spot, but in this game, I decided to just call, slow play here, hoping that someone behind me will put in a squeeze play, trying to take down this dead money and to win a pot, and I'll be able to back jam all in. Unfortunately, Rampage calls, Patrick calls, but Action Dan comes in as the hero here and puts in the 3-bet squeeze. As I was hoping for here, he makes it $3,000 to go. Over now to Dylan, who's got a monster under the gun, and he decides to go all in for his $13,000. My first hand playing here, there's nothing else to do but go all in myself.
Lex O with a chance to triple up.
Dan thinks for a while, but folds his ace-deuce offsuit. Good fold. Dan, back over now to Dylan and I. Dylan asked me once or twice. I just tell him, let's go once this entire stream for max pain and max action. So this is it. My first hand, $16,000 in the middle with pocket kings. Let's see if we can hold.
No help for Dylan there. Oh, Rampage folded Jack 3.
Flop is good. Turn gives him some outs, but he doesn't hit it on the river. And just like that, I win $10,000 worth of profit. My plan was to try to be short stack early on so that I can shove and take down some pots pre-flop and try to get some of those bounties. But that looks like that's not going to be the case. Right off the bat, I go from a $5,000 stack all the way up to a $16K stack in the first 5 minutes of this live stream. Now this is when the game gets very interesting. I've won a pot, and if I win the very next hand after that, I win $1,000 out of the bounty pool. If I win another hand after that, I make $2,500 out of the bounty pool, and so on and so forth. So I'm super incentivized to win the very next hand after I win a hand. I get dealt in 10-8 of spades from early position, and instead of raising, I decided to just call here. My strategy going in was try to keep the pot small and manageable with my mediocre hands when I'm trying to win a pot. Instead of raising and getting 3-bet and potentially 4-bet, I just want to try to see a flop with a mediocre hand. So I call, Ted raises, 2 other players call, and I call as well, and we go 4 ways to a good board for me, Queen, Queen, 10 with 1 spade. I flop second pair. Most likely I've got the best hand. Instead of checking to Ted and allowing him to check back, I decide to take the lead now with my pair and bet out for $500. Now, everybody at the table realizes that I'm trying to win a hand extra hard here, so I feel like I am going to get a lot of pushback. So when Ted calls, I feel like he can have a wide range of ace-high hands, king-high hands, smaller pairs. So when the turn's a 3 of hearts, I ask to see how much he's playing. Looks like he's playing about $13,000 or $15,000. Instead of continuing to bet with my showdown value now, I decide to check over to Ted, and he checks back. I'm feeling very good about this hand leading into the river, which is a 5 of hearts. Now, I think my hand is way too good to turn into a bluff. I feel like a lot of the time Ted's going to have a smaller pair or an ace-high, king-high hand. So I check for a second time, looking to just check call any bet that he makes. When he slides out 1500, easy call for me, thinking I should win a lot of the time I show my cards, but unfortunately not this time, up against Queen Jack for trips. My dreams of winning a $1,000 bounty and going on and take all of it is crushed, and I lose around $2,000 in this pot. This game is just really wild. It's unlike any game I've ever played. Basically, you have $1,000 or $2,500 ante in the middle just for you if you've won one or two hands, and also it just creates so much action in the game. So many people are bluffing, calling raises, 3-betting, 4-betting pre-flop. It's unlike any game I've ever played, and the action is insane. Speaking of insane, Rampage is here, and he is going off. Very aggressive pre-flop. In this hand, he goes all in with Ace-6 offsuit versus Action Dan's raise in order to try to win a pot for the bounty. And then the next hand, he goes all in with King-2 suited versus a 3-bet by Action Dan. Rampage is definitely on a tear, trying to win some pots and take down some bounties. Now, this pre-flop action definitely comes into factor in the next hand that I play up against him. It folds to Dylan in the hijack, who raises to $200. I'm going to cut off with Ace-Jack offsuit. Probably should always be 3-betting this hand, but given the fact that I'm in position against him, I decided to just call. Mariano gets out of the way, and now Rampage is in the small blind with around $20-some thousand in his stack and decides to go all in again. Wow. About 3 or 4 all-ins from him in the last 15 minutes. Dylan pretty quickly makes to fold, and now the action's back over on me with Ace-Jack offsuit, and versus Rampage, who's been going all in with Ace-6 and King-2, I feel like Ace-Jack may be a call in this situation.
He's flipping at best here. I mean, not necessarily. I guess Rampage could have any 2 cards, right? But he probably hope that it's a small pair and he makes the call. Don't call Lex O a nit. He makes the call with Ace-Jack offsuit. Balls of steel.
In a normal poker game, calling an all-in pre-flop with Ace-Jack offsuit for almost 300 big blinds would be a complete and total punt, but that's why this bounty game is so awesome. Ace-Jack offsuit is a monster in this game, especially up against Ethan, who's been going all in with some moderate strength hands. Ace-High could be good. We could be flipping at worst, so I make the call. $28,000 pot between me and Rampage.
Gods reward him.
I have a set.
No, Rampage has a set. Oh, sorry, look, though. Nice try, though. Wait, he can hit a 9. 9 one time.
Oh.
He hits a 9.
Wow.
So the poker gods do reward the gamble.
9 one time. When the flop came out, Rampage announced he had a set. I said I was drawing dead, but I turned a gut shot and rivered a straight. I mean, it was a flip pre-flop, Ace-Jack versus pocket fives, but wow, what a sick run out to win $14,000 worth of profit there on the river. And just like that, buying in for around $6,000 and paying the $6,000 bounty pool, I'm the biggest winner so far on the day, up around $13,000. Just like before, after winning that hand with Ace-Jack, I now am eligible for a bounty. If I win the next hand, I get $1,000, and then I have the capability of going on to potentially win it all. Unfortunately, I get dealt in 8-deuce offsuit. What a terrible hand, but I gotta get in there. I have a $1,000 ante in the middle that's just for me. I limp, Ted raises, Patrick calls, Dan calls, I call as well, and we go 4 ways in position, which I feel like is a pretty good thing for me, to a flop of 10-9-5. Terrible flop, but when the action checks over to me, I'm going to take a stab here and bet $800. With the bounty game in play, like I said, there's a $1,000 ante in this pot that's just eligible for me, and the biggest thing is the potential of what could happen. I mean, if I could win this pot, and then next hand, if I could get pocket jacks and go all in, I could win $2,500, and then the next hand I'm eligible for a $6,000 bounty. So it's just escalating so quickly, it really incentivizes you to try to win a hand. I bet out $500 here, and only Ted makes to call. It's looking pretty good, given the fact that he check called here. I feel like he most likely doesn't have a top pair holding, which means on this king turn card, I feel like I can continue to barrel and try to get him to fold out maybe pocket sevens, pocket sixes, a 5, maybe even a 9x hand. I bet out for $2,000, and unfortunately for me, Ted turns the nut flush draw along with a pair, so he cannot go anywhere at all. If that turn card wasn't the king of clubs, I actually think this $2,000 bet would get through a majority of the time. After a little bit of thinking, Ted makes a call, and I'm considering if I want to go for a big river bluff when the final card comes out another king, but Ted does not give me that option when he leads out for a $7,000 bet. Nothing I can do here with 8 high, I fold. It's definitely a weird dynamic. Should I have even tried to win this pot and lose $3,000 only for a $1,000 ante? However, if I could have won, I could have been fighting for the $6,000 or for the $30,000 bounty. I don't know, I'm learning as I go. I'm sitting right next to Mariano and Rampage, and they make a bet between each other that the first person to shuffle their chips owes the other person $500. Mariano tells me that I'm going to be the ref. If I see one of them shuffling their chips, I have to call it out, and I'll make $25 for whoever wins. About 30 minutes into this challenge, somebody breaks the rules.
Remember that? Good times. Yeah. Oh, yes! Shuffle. What? It's after I get stacked too. Oh my god, my guard was down.
And Lex saw it.
I know. I heard the chip shuffle. I heard it. I was like, oh no, I can't.
Dude, red-handed.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh,
Good catch.
Now I got it. Oh.
I put in $6,000 into this bounty pool early on, and I haven't won a single bounty yet. A lot of other players at the table have won bounties, and the bounty pool is getting lower and lower. I felt like I just had to get in there with more hands to give myself a shot, at least to try to get some bounties here. I mean, I put in $6,000. I'd like to try to get back at least a couple $1,000s. So I call a raise with King 8 offsuit, and we go 5 ways to a 10-8-5 flop. Flopping middle pair for me when the action checks to me. I check, Mariano checks, and Ted checks behind. Turn card's a 5 of diamonds, now pairing the board, bringing 2 flush draws. Action Dan, who has been bringing the action so far in this session, playing like 80% VPIP, leads out for $1,600. Against Action Dan, it's pretty hard to fold a pair, especially with all these straight draws and flush draws available. So I make the call for $1,600. Mariano now makes the call as well after checking on the flop. I feel like that's pretty interesting. Feel like he could have an 8, maybe a weaker 10, possibly a flush draw or straight draw as well. And the river card's a very interesting one when it comes out the King of Hearts, giving me 2 pair, technically 3 pair on the board. Dan does not slow down. He fires out an $8,000 bet. To my calculations, that's over a pot-sized bet. If he was going to bet anything like the pot or 2/3 pot or even half pot, I would just snap call. But versus this $8,000 bet into 2 people, I'm starting to think now maybe my King 8 is no good. It's pretty unlikely for someone to bluff on the turn, get 2 callers, and then continue to bluff on the river into 2 separate players, especially when one of the players could have made top pair with a hand like King X of spades or King X of diamonds. But this is Action Dan. He's been going incredibly wild this entire session. I really go back and forth here whether I want to call or fold. He's representing a 5 or a full house. He shouldn't have pocket 10s for a full house. I don't think he's got pocket 8s because I blocked that. So basically he's got a 5 or nothing. I count out $8,000. I'm about to put it in the middle. And then at the last second, I changed my mind and fold my 2 pair. I just didn't think Action Dan was bluffing here. Now Mariano is in a 6th spot. He's got a better 2 pair than me. So I was 3rd place in this hand. Mariano's got top 2 pair, King 10, and eventually he does put in the call. And I get to see the good news that Action Dan had trips with 5 deuce offsuit. Just 2 hands after this, Action Dan is just running over this table. As you can see in front of him, he has 2 buttons, meaning that he's won 2 hands in a row. He picked up the $2,500 bounty, and now he's going for his 3rd win in a row, which would be a $6,000 bounty. Patrick raises from early position. Dan calls next to act. I call with 6-5 of clubs, and we end up going 6 ways to a flop of 3-4-5 with 1 club. I flop very well with top pair and an open-ended straight draw. Once Patrick checks, Dan now leads out for a pot-sized bet of $1,200, which doesn't surprise me at all. He has a $6,000 ante inside this pot. The pot's $1,200, but really to him, the pot's close to $8,000. I just make the call, which I think is a mistake. I feel like I just want to be raising my hand versus Action Dan and probably just trying to get it in versus him, versus his potential range. I mean, he's going to be betting a ton of hands on this board. Ted makes the call as well, and we go 3 ways now to the ace of spades on the turn. Dan fires again for $4,500. You know what I said earlier about a player not usually bluffing once they get 2 calls? Well, that goes completely out of the window when a player is going for a $6,000 bounty, because this bounty is so big, it makes Dan so much more likely to be bluffing trying to take down this pot so that he can win the bounty. I think with a hand as strong as mine, a pair and open-ended straight draw versus this particular player, can't really be folding. He's representing a very strong hand once he bets pot on this turn, basically saying he's got a straight with a 2 or something like 6-7. I block 6-7, so I make the call. Ted makes the fold. $13,000 in the middle, hoping for some help here, maybe a 7, maybe a 2. Give me a straight one time. No, it's the king of hearts. Obviously, I would love it if Dan checks to me. I would snap check back, but I know that's just not going to be the case. I realize here that if Dan has a total airball like queen high, jack high, 10 high, 8 high, any of these hands, he's going to fire out for a huge sizing trying to get me to fold. I do think he would check hands like ace X for top pair, because that hand doesn't need a bluff, it's just trying to get to showdown. Even if he did have 2 pair, he may just check, hoping that maybe I would bluff and that he could hero call me. So when he fires out a $13,500 bet, he's basically representing a 2 for a straight, 6-7 for a straight, or a total complete airball bluff. Real quickly, I'll tell you guys what was going through my mind. I don't think he ever has an ace-X holding here. 1, I don't think he's ever betting this size with an ace. I also don't think he ever has an ace because he just called Patrick's raise pre-flop. He would always be 3-betting his ace-X holdings pre-flop, trying to take it down. I don't think he's got 2 pair or a set or a king-X hand or pocket 9s or pocket 10s. He would never go this sizing with those particular hands. So basically, like I said, he's got a straight or a bluff. I block the straight. Really tough spot here. I don't want to call and look like an idiot and be wrong, but it's really hard to make a straight. I don't know. Dan's a wild player. If he's got me, he's got me. Eventually, I make the call.
It's the call. Wow, what an attempted hero call from Lex O. The leveling from the bounty game induces one of the most insane calls of the night. Actually, the most insane call of the night. Next to Mariano's King 4.
Oof, this one hurt. I basically get completely stacked, lose a $40,000 pot to Action Dan's 8-deuce offsuit. I mean, poker is just so sick. You always ride the fine line of looking like a genius or looking like a complete idiot. Being results-oriented, this play, this call looks pretty horrible. However, if he did have those queen high, jack high, 10 high bluffs, I would look like a genius winning a $40,000 pot with 3rd pair. I actually feel like I played this hand fine. I feel like once I get to the river and he bets his sizing, given the circumstances of the bounty game versus the particular player as well, it's a pretty easy call. However, I don't think I needed to battle in this hand. I didn't really have too much incentive to call on the turn and then call all in on the river. But if someone's punting, you want to try to let them punt and catch a punt. I don't know. It's a tough one. Doesn't feel the best to have a $28,000 stack and now have a $700 stack. I went from up $13,000 to now down around $15K. Even though I lost this pot, I'm still trying to have some fun. I end up giving Jungleman some pointers when it comes to handshakes.
How to play this bounty game in real time.
No. You're early squeezing.
You can be my handshake coach.
There, that's perfect.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know how much.
You did the early grab, you know?
Make sure you get it right. I'll spend like the 3 minutes on it.
I go back to my initial strategy of short buying, trying to have a short stack to try to get all in, to try to win some pots. I rebuy for $5,000, down $14K. Let's try to get it back. Earlier today when I found out the rules of this bounty game, I texted some of my friends for some advice, and the majority of them were saying I should buy in short, be aggressive pre-flop, and take middling pocket pairs, suited broadways, ace-high hands, and just try to get them all in if I'm 100 big blinds deep, trying to win a hand in order to try to win a bounty, because there's so much money that's potential in the middle with that ante game, basically. So in this hand that comes into factor, Dylan raises, I call with pocket 6s, Jungleman calls, Ted calls, and now Patrick in the small blind re-raises to $3,000. Another game we're playing is the button bounty or button bonus game, where everybody on the button puts in $100 and it accumulates, and only the small blind player can win this. People call it the kitty game, the mushroom game, whatever. So Patrick is very incentivized to win this hand because there's $1,500 on the button for him to win. He's also incentivized to win the hand because if he wins a hand, he can go for a bounty. With all that being said, pocket sixes versus that range, potentially if Patrick can have 100 big blinds deep, I decided to jam all in with my pair, thinking it's hard for him to have a pair. He could have ace high, king high. We could be flipping. So I go all in. He calls. We're playing a $10,000 pot. And he tells me he's got pocket jacks. Oh, shit. I reach into my pocket to get a 5K out just because I feel like I'm probably going to lose this one. I mean, I did get really lucky earlier against Rampage, ace jack versus pocket fives. Rooting for a 6 on this flop, but unfortunately it does not come. I lose another $10,000 pot. I pay out Patrick. And now I'm down $20,000 in this session. Always trying to be honest and transparent. I don't really like this play versus Patrick in particular. He had been playing very snug, a little bit nitty, hadn't gotten out of line this entire session. So when he raises to $3,000, he probably has a very good hand. With that being said, probably not the best play to go all in pre-flop with pocket sixes versus Patrick. I mean, against a lot of other players like Action Dan, Mariano, Rampage, it would be a slam dunk all in, but against him, probably not. I mean, this is all being results oriented, of course. If he had ace king or ace queen and I held up and won a flip, it would look like a great play. So either way, I'm fine with it. Probably a little bit too high variance, probably didn't need to do that, but I get a spot to try to get my money back the very next hand. Dan raises to 200, Dylan goes all in the hijack. I've got $5,000, pocket nines. I snap call this all in bet. Like I said before, we're just trying to get all in with 100 big blinds with our middling pocket pairs. Back over to Action Dan, who calls this all in bet as well. So we're 3 ways all in here. I have no idea if pocket nines are ahead or behind. There is $15,000 in the middle, and when the flop comes out 9 high, I'm feeling pretty good about my hand.
Well, that means Dylan can hit a 7. 7 from heaven for Dylan.
I don't know if that's
Not today. Lex O going to take it down, and a much-needed victory for Lex O.
Wow, did you see how well I played that pocket nines hand, guys? I'm a freaking genius. I'm probably the best poker player at this table. I called an all-in, I hit a set, I held up against pocket deuces and ace 5. I win a $15,000 pot, $9,000 worth of profit. Damn, I am super, super good at this game. The very next hand after my triple up with pocket nines, which I would argue would be one of the best played poker hands in live stream history, Patrick raises, Dan 3 bets, and I've got ace queen of clubs in the hijack. You can see this silver button in front of me, meaning that I've won one hand. If I win another hand, I get a $1,000 bounty bonus. Now in this situation, I would always be 4-betting Action Dan because he's so wide and my hand is so strong, but I'm pretty concerned about Patrick. He raised under the gun. He hasn't gotten out of line this entire session, hasn't shown down any big bluffs or bad hands, so I decided to cold call this 3-bet. Rampage is on the button and calls as well with a 9-6. There's a bounty for that. Ted calls, back over to Patrick with 18K in his stack, and he decides to rip it all in. Oh my god, Dan gets out of the way. I have 13K all in now with ace queen of clubs against the tightest player at the table. What should we do?
The Dan's against the world.
There's 3 of you guys. It's too many.
After winning all this money, he's going to potentially throw it all away. He tripled up not 5 minutes ago.
I don't want to give you any more money, Pat.
I basically assessed the situation that I don't think Pat's going all in for $18,000 and all these people with a hand worse than mine. I'm almost always flipping. I don't think it's worth it. So I fold the ace queen, and it turns out Pat had ace king. I was completely crushed. And again, I make one of the best plays in poker live stream history, folding ace queen when I'm up against ace king. I'm just playing above the rim today. Probably the best poker I've ever played, up there with Phil Ivey, Tom Dwan, Dan Unigranu, Lexo Poker, all in the same mix. Now I'm only down $10,000 on the day. Take a look at these V-pips. Action Dan playing 82% of hands. I'm playing 48%, and I'm in the middle of the pack. It just goes to show how crazy and wild this game is. I mean, I can't really show it because I'm only showing hands that I played, but there's just some insane hands going on between Mariano, Action Dan, Rampage, and Jungleman. It's just wild. It's an insane game tonight. As the game proceeds, the bounty pool starts to get smaller, which de-incentivizes me to have a shorter stack, so I start adding on a little bit more to my stack. I've got 17k now in front of me. Rampage opens min for $100. Couple calls. I call only $50 more with Queen 2. Just getting a great price. Got to call 50 to win $500. I make second pair, worst kicker. I check. Rampage checks. Action Dan, who has one silver button, meaning that he has won one hand, takes a stab for $400. Can never fold a pair to Action Dan when he's trying to win a bounty. So I call 400, and surprisingly, Rampage calls as well. I'm not sure what he's check calling with here. I feel like he would be betting all of his straight draws and flush draws on the flop. It's possible he could have ace 3 or 3-4, 3-5, something like that. Maybe some backdoor draws. So when the turn card's the ace of diamonds, I'm most likely done with this hand if anyone bets, but the action ends up checking all the way around. Final card now, 5 of clubs. I'm not going to be betting here with third pair. There's so many hands that beat me. Straights, flushes, bigger cards like an ace or a king or a queen with a better kicker, so I check, just trying to get to showdown. And now Rampage bets out around a pot-sized bet of $1,600. Action Dan snap folds, action back over on me, and I don't immediately fold my hand because it doesn't really make too much sense. I mean, what kind of hands could Rampage have here? Would he raise pre-flop and then check a flush draw on the flop? Would he check hands like ace-king or a set of kings or aces on the flop? I don't think so. He's repping 2-pair, top pair, sets, and flushes, and I feel like all those hands would c-bet on the flop, so I am a little unbelieving. However, he could be bluffing with a better hand. The pot's not even that big. I don't think it's worth it, so I just fold and get owned. I get bluffed by 10-9 offsuit. Probably one of the worst folds in poker history. I folded third pair to a pot-sized bet with a deuce kicker. Please, guys, go down into the comment section below and let me know how terrible, how awful I am at poker and how bad I played this hand. I mean, I should not even be at these stakes. I should go back down to 1-2. I'm probably going to go broke. Speaking of going broke, if Rampage would have showed his cards, he did win with jack high or less, which is a $1,000 bounty, but he didn't show his cards. He forgot. He doesn't get that $1,000 bounty, but he does bluff me off my pair. Nice hand, Ethan. Just a few hands later, I get dealt in 6-7 of diamonds, raised to $200 under the gun, and Mariano 3-bets to $700 next to act. Folds over here to Action Dan, who cold calls this 3-bet. Dylan calls, and I contemplate 4-betting for a second, but I don't think my hand plays really well as a 4-bet. I definitely cannot fold versus this price. I don't think I will get any credit if I 4-bet, so I just make the call for $700, and we go 4 ways to jack 8-6, making second pair for me. Action checks all the way around, and the turn card's a 5, now giving me an open-ended straight draw along with a pair. Sticking to his action ways, Dan in the small blind bets out into 3 people, making it $1,700 to go. Dylan makes a call for $1,700, and with my pair and an open-ended straight draw getting a great price, calling is definitely the play. Sometimes I could put in a raise here representing straights, 2 pairs, and sets, but up against a player like Dan who is so call happy, I don't really think bluffing him is the best idea. So I just call, looking for some help, maybe 2 pair, maybe a straight. Give me a good card on the river, one-time magic, and I get it. 4 of hearts. I hit a straight, finally. I've been waiting for this moment all night. I actually make a hand in a decent-sized pot, and it gets even better when Action Dan fires out a big bet of $6,000. Back over here to Dylan, who calls $6,000. Man, this is a great spot. I've got $13,000 left in my stack. I've got a straight, an easy all-in jam for me.
This is all Hollywooding. We know those chips are going in the middle, and there they go.
All in.
All in.
All in.
Can I get a count real quick?
It's an annoying spot for Dylan.
An annoying spot for Dylan indeed. He's got top pair, top kicker. This board has not run out well. He's got Action Dan blasting off with ace high. He made the right call against Action Dan, but of course up against my straight, his ace jack is no good. It's only $7,000 more for him to call. I haven't really won a big pot all night. If he calls, this will be over a $40,000 pot going my way. Dylan starts talking to himself out loud, thinking and saying that I probably don't have any bluffs here. Am I really ever bluffing? And he's right. I just never would be bluffing in this situation versus these players for this little bit of money. And Dylan ends up making a great fold here with top pair, top kicker. A $32,000 pot is going our way here. A big profit in this hand, and things are starting to turn around. I was up early on around $20,000. Then I was down $20,000, and now we're creeping right back to even on the night. I played a few exciting pots so far, but nothing too crazy. However, that is all about to change. Ted raises to $200, Patrick calls $200, Action Dan re-raises now to $1,200. Pocket sevens on the button, pretty deep stack versus Action Dan being super wide all the time. I decided to 3-bet here. I make it $4,000 to go. I actually made a mistake in this hand. I thought Ted straddled for $200. Patrick called and Dan raised, but it turns out Ted raised, Patrick called, and Action Dan 3-bet. If I would have known this, I probably wouldn't have re-raised on the button, because technically I'm 4-betting here. I probably would have just called this 3-bet, but now the action's back over on Dan, and he decides to put in another raise, a 5th bet pre-flop, to $11,200. I am sitting pretty deep stacked here, $38,000 effective, but I gotta call $7,000 more. Pocket sevens probably are not the best hand anymore. However, I flew all the way out here to California to play some huge pots and break some records, and I'm not gonna break any records by folding, so I make the call for $7,200 more. 5-bet pot with pocket sevens, $22,000 in the middle. Heads up to King, Queen, 7. Oh my God. I flop bottom set in a 5-bet pot in position versus a crazy action player. He continues for a $6,500 bet. And I remember that this feeling I had right now was one of the best feelings I've ever had. I make a huge hand. I'm pretty sure I'm way ahead here. I'm not going to raise and scare him off or fold out any of his bluffs. I'm going to smooth call here, so that's what I do. Line out $6,500 and slide it into the middle. I have a great hand, but I do lose to kings and queens. Also, the turn card could be bad and kill my action, or maybe improve him to a straight or flush, and the turn is the jack of diamonds. Not the best card, but Action Dan checks over to me. I've got $20,000 in my stack, $35,000 in the middle. I think there's just one option. I rip it all in.
All in.
This sucks.
All in and a call.
Just aces.
One time.
I get called, and now I'm playing a $76,000 pot with a set. I hear Dan say just aces. I'm not sure if that's what hand he has. He's not showing his cards. We're going to run out this board one time. If he does have aces, I just got to fade a 10 or an ace. My heart is pounding. I'm incredibly nervous here. I'm pretty sure I'm ahead, but I hope that I can hold on the river. One-time dealer, final card, Queen of Hearts. I make a full house and win the biggest pot of my entire life on a Thursday night here in Los Angeles, California at Hustler Casino Live with pocket sevens.
And ends up getting stacked. Or rather, doubling legs up.
I think we have 7 in that one. One of the 7. Wow. If we had a 7, flipped over.
No, it was 10, 6, 9.
If we had a 7 down.
I would have folded the 3-bet, 4-bet. I think that was the biggest.
I'm pretty sure that that is the biggest pot of Lex O. Poker's career.
Straight's not coming.
Ryan pointing out he made a tweet a week or two ago, and I remember this tweet. He talked about a $60,000 pot that he lost and said it was the biggest pot of his life thus far, and that he looks forward to playing more bigger pots, and maybe he'll win one. Well, now, a week later,
too much money goes in one shitty pair.
Just a couple years ago, I was sweating hard playing $760 pots. Now I'm on a live stream playing $76,000 pots. Just amazing, an incredible moment, probably a hand I'll never forget. I do end up selling action for these huge games in order to reduce the variance and also to protect my bankroll. I sell to some friends, but if you guys are interested in buying some action for these upcoming live stream games that I'm playing in the future, send me an email at lexopoker@gmail.com, title action. A $1,000 minimum investment will be needed. Also, if you guys want to play some online poker with me, I'll be playing throughout the month of May every single night. Get yourself on the app, put some money on, so we can play some poker together. And also, by the way, I'm up $40,000 on the night. An incredible experience so far, leading in to the last few hands. An orbit later, I raised and took down the blinds, and now in this next hand, I do have a silver button, which means I'm eligible for the bounty bonus. I call a raise with 5-3 offsuit and float an ace-king-king board versus Action Dan and Mariano. Like I said, there's a $1,000 ante in the middle just for me if I win this hand. On the turn card deuce of hearts, I pick up a straight draw. When the action checks to me, I'm going to bet, try to bluff here, get my opponents off queen high hands, jack high hands like Action Dan has. I make it $1,100 to go. Back over to Mariano here with his top pair, and he folds his top pair. Action Dan folds his jack high, and I take down a pot, and I actually win a bounty, my first one of the night.
I won a bounty.
Oh,
Holy
he had
shit.
the bounty. Oh,
Yeah, that was
Lexo wins a bounty.
Holy.
fuck for a bad fold I made.
Next up, Action Dan races to 500. I call in the hijack with pocket sixes. On the button now, Rampage re-races to $2,000 to go. Action Dan folds. I'm super deep stacked against Rampage. If I hit a set, maybe I could win another big pot. I make the call. We go heads up here out of position to 9-5-2 with a flush draw. All in all, only one overcard to my pair. Probably not a bad spot. When I check, Ethan bets out $4,500, a pot-sized bet. I make the call here. When the turn pairs the board, I check to him again, and he fires out another huge bet, pot size of $13K, and now I have to make a decision. With his raise pre-flop, his pot size bet on the flop, and pot size bet on the turn, he's repping pretty strong hands like 10s, jacks, queens, kings, and aces, but this is Rampage. He could easily be bluffing. The problem is, I don't know if I'd call this $13,000 if he's ever going to give up on the river. Before the hand started, he let Mariano and Jungleman look at his cards and sweat the action. And usually when someone starts a bluff and other players at the table are sweating the action, they're probably not going to slow down on that bluff on the river. So I feel like if I call this $13K, I'll have to be ready to call 20, 25, 30K on the river. And with the pocket sixes, I just don't think that hand is necessary to call down here. So I fold. I end up losing around $6,000 in this hand, getting bluffed by Jack 10. It's been a long stream and a long video, but I got one more big hand for you guys. Action Dan raises, I call on the button with ace-10 suited. Mariano calls in the small blind with 3 chips in front of him. As you can see, he's won 3 hands in a row. He's going for the 4th one, which is a $6,000 bounty. Rampage now bumps it up with a 3-bet squeeze to $4,000. Rest of the players fold, and to be honest, I thought it was going to be Mariano to be doing the 3-bet squeezing pre-flop, which is why I didn't raise a hand as strong as ace-10 suited. But now that Rampage raised, I'm in position with a suited ace. Easy call for me given the fact how deep stacked we are. Mariano thinks for a little bit of time, and he makes the call as well. So for the first time this live stream, we've got Poker Vlogger on Poker Vlogger on Poker Vlogger action here. 3 ways to a flop and a 3-bet pot. 12K in the middle to ace, jack, 9 with 1 spade. I make top pair with a decent kicker. Mariano checks. Rampage, who put in a $4,000 bet pre-flop, checks over to me, and now I have to decide what sizing I want to go with my top pair, or if I want to check. Now you may be thinking to yourself, why would you ever check top pair? Well, in a 3-bet pot multi-way with ace-10, we're either going to be way ahead, or we're going to be way behind. We're going to be way ahead of hands like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, maybe 9x holdings, but we're going to be way behind hands like ace-jack, pocket 9s, pocket jacks, ace-king, ace-queen. Also, given the fact that Mariano has to try to win this pot for a $6,000 extra ante in the middle, I feel like he's definitely incentivized to try to bluff a little bit more. By checking back this flop, maybe it will induce him to bluff big on the turn and the river, and I can just call down and potentially win a big pot. So that's what I decided to do. Check for pot control and deception. And the turn card's a queen, now giving me a gut shot straight draw along with my top pair. Mariano checks. Rampage checks for a second time, and now given this action, I think my hand is a must bet. I make it 1/3 size of the pot, $4,000 to go. And unfortunately, this is what I was somewhat worried about. Mariano tanks and then raises to $16,500. Well, maybe I induced this one by checking back the flop. An interesting spot here. I got to call $12,000 more. I have an interesting holding here because I blocked 2 pairs for him to have, like ace-jack, ace-9. He shouldn't have pocket queens ever. Shouldn't ever have pocket jacks. Should never have pocket aces. Shouldn't have ace-queen either because I think he would re-raise that hand pre-flop. So basically he's representing hands like ace-9, ace-jack, queen-jack, queen-9, and then king-10 for a straight. I've got a 10 in my hand, so I block him from having king-10. I also block some of his bluffs, which means he may be weighted a little bit more towards value. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do versus this $16,000 raise, but that option is no longer on the table. After thinking for a while, Rampage jams all in for $60,000. Back over to me, and now I do feel like I just have an easy decision. Somewhat of a tilting spot because I lose $8,000 in this hand, but I make a pretty easy fold. Mariano obviously snap calls with the nuts. They run it twice, and Mariano wins a massive $137,000 pot to close out the night. I played a lot of poker games in my life, but this one is by far the craziest and wildest game I've ever played. Also winning the biggest pot of my entire life. I end up finishing here with a $59,000 stack. Shortly after this, I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage, and cashing out for the night. Wow, Cybertruck. First time seeing one of these in real life. Only in LA, right? Pretty cool. I am exhausted. 5 hours on the Hustler live stream. I believe this is my 5th or 6th time playing on the stream, I think, something like that. By far the biggest game I had ever played was tonight. Huge stacks, huge action, huge pots. I went with the smaller min buy-in of this bounty structure. So I've never played this bounty game before. It was the second time they played it here at Hustler. It was really fun. It was really exciting. And it was also kind of annoying and frustrating as well. It was annoying and frustrating to me because I couldn't pick up any hands. I wasn't winning any pots. I couldn't even get the opportunity to try to win 2 pots or 3 pots. And yeah, it was really annoying because I was just losing a lot. It was a really super swingy session. As you guys saw, one with kings, lost with 6-5, one lost. Between the bounties and losing the hands, I'm pretty sure I was down like 20,000, maybe even more. So I was stuck a lot. I then started to add on to my stack thinking, hey, there's only 2 hours left, I'll add on. Started winning some pots, made a straight, made some hands, had like a $38,000 stack before I 3-bet pocket 7s, called a 4-bet with pocket 7s, hit a set against aces and won the biggest pot of my entire life. $76,000 pot going my way. I told you guys, sitting in my kitchen, that hopefully I'll be talking about a bigger pot and hopefully it will be going my way. Just 2 weeks ago, I lost a $60,000 pot going all in with ace-5. Today, winning a $76,000 pot. I mean, it feels awesome, feels great. If I'm gonna play these bigger games, I'm gonna take these bigger swings. So of course, I could lose a huge pot just like I did. I could win a big pot. It was an awesome game. I felt like I played well. I didn't feel like I played terrible. I feel like I gave action. I was in there with the cards that I could get and ended up profiting $21,600 on the day. So I'll take it. Got to play with Mariano, Rampage, Action Dan Jungleman, and some other guys as well. It was a great game. It was pretty serious at first, but it kind of loosened up and got more lively either way. But I mean, it's kind of surreal. It's kind of cool that I was able to come out here and play in this game. And tomorrow I'm playing an even bigger game, 50, 100, 200 with some of the same guys. So I'm excited for that. Could go good, could go bad. We'll see. You guys will see on the next vlog. But yeah, I'm going to go home and relax. I got a big day tomorrow. Going to eat some more chocolate, eat some more food, and get ready for tomorrow. And today was fun. I'm really, really grateful and thankful to come out with a $21,000 win with the players that are at the table and the lineup there. It was a tough lineup, a lot of tough players, so I'll take it. winning the biggest pot of my entire life on a live stream with 10,000 people watching, I'll take it as well. I'm exhausted. I'm going to go home. Please like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you.